And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, hold on just one second, let me just move this here. There we go. We are going to go ahead and continue looking at the anonymous GM polls. And this time we're going to focus on the defense. So the GMs, they ended up doing several votes for defense. There were, let's see, let me go right ahead and just view them. So there's a poll on who they think is the best defensive player, who they think is the best perimeter defensive player, who they think is the best interior defensive player, most versatile, and the best team defense. So we're going to go ahead and look at all of that in this one segment. And we have enough time to do that because, ironically, the player that they choose tends to be the same for a lot of these categories. But we're going to go right ahead. So they first were asked a question on who they felt was the best defensive player in the NBA, like period, best defensive player. And of course, it was Victor Wembanyama. He dominated this polling. He was clear-cut first place pick for the best defender in the NBA. 40% of the GMs ended up voting in favor of Victor Wembanyama. And there was a three-way tie for second. Bam Adebayo got 10% of the votes, Rudy Gobert got 10% of the votes, and Drew Holiday as well got 10% of the votes. And, I mean, it's clear-cut to me that Victor Wembanyama is the best defender in the entire NBA. His rim protection is just clear-cut, and more clear-cut than it is for a lot of some of these other players in their rim protection, mainly Rudy Gobert. And again, it's just a phenomenal game. It's just a phenomenal defensive game that Victor Wembanyama plays, and he's only going to get better. This was his rookie season, and I expect his defense to greatly improve as the years go on. And I also expect teams to be more aware of Victor Wembanyama's presence in the paint and maybe not go up with some shots because, they're afraid of getting blocked, which already happened in the previous season. There were several teams that ended up passing up one-on-three fast breaks because Victor Wembanyama was in the paint, and they were all like, yeah, no, I'm not taking a layup over the 7'4" guy. That's absolutely ridiculous. You're asking me to get sent. And that's usually the case. And one of the most memorable times when that happened, Christian Braun was ahead of Victor Wembanyama on one play, and he chose not to take the wide open layup because he was afraid Victor would block him. Instead, opted in giving the ball to Michael Porter, who was wide open for three. Of course, Michael Porter shot it and ended up making the shot. So we're already seeing the impact on Victor Wembanyama's defense. And some other players that were that got recognized for their defensive talents. Giannis Antetokounmpo ended up getting 7% of the votes. Anthony Davis also ended up getting 7%, and so did Herb Jones for the New Orleans Pelicans. And players that were also receiving votes were Alex Caruso, Jaden McDaniels, and Marcus Smart for Memphis. And, I mean, obviously Victor was going to be the clear-cut favorite for who was going to be the best overall defender. Now, who did GMs think was the best perimeter defender? Well, it was Drew Holiday. And really no complaints around there either. He was picked for second team all-defense alongside with Derek White. And he received 43% of the votes for being the best perimeter defender in the NBA. Now, other worthy players that were considered for a vote, Alex Caruso ended up getting 20%, Herb Jones ended up getting 17%, and Lou Dort for Oklahoma City ended up getting 7%. Other players that received votes were OG Anunoby, Jaden McDaniels, again, Marcus Smart, again, and Derek White, again. And, I mean, I think it's clear-cut that Drew Holiday was the best perimeter defender of last season, and so deserves to be the best perimeter defender going into this season until proven otherwise. And to be fair, I mean, the entire in the entire Celtics roster, Drew Holiday is clear-cut the best perimeter defender. And that's saying a lot because Derek White, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum are also very competent perimeter defenders as well. There is somebody in the chat as well. Anthony Manzano, what's going on? So he has a comment about the earlier segment about LeBron. For me, the reason why LeBron has that record in the finals is I think his fans I overrate him just a little bit. I give respect to LeBron. He's a great player. No, LeBron is not overrated. In fact, there is an argument that can be made that he is actually the most underrated player in the entire history of basketball, making 8 straight finals in a row, and he gets insulted for that because he couldn't win in most of them, even though it wasn't his fault. And I've never really heard of anyone make it to 8 straight finals and still get called a bad playoff performer, still get mentioned for his bad finals record. Like, making the finals, as we've seen in the last few years, is not easy to do consistently. There have been multiple different teams that have made the finals over the last 6 years, and the fact that LeBron has been able to do it for 8 straight is nothing short of impressive, but of course he gets criticized for it. And he continues going on, but he is not as much of a generational talent as his hardcore fans make him out to be. Yes, he is. And the reason why a lot of hardcore fans make him out to be that talent is because there are a bunch of haters and a bunch of people that don't think that LeBron's talents are worthy that kind of respect due to his finals record. So LeBron is, in my opinion, underrated in certain fans. And it's really just like, that's literally just how it is. Like, he's made it to 8 straight. No other player has been able to do that consistently. And Manzano continues going, and this is why I can't stand LeBron fans, man. Late, they blame everything around LeBron, but not put the blame on him. If you watch the previous segment, then you'll see why I don't put the blame on him for that final segment. He averaged a triple-double in the finals, yet still lost. How was that his fault? Averaged 34, 9, and 10, still lost. Don't know how that's his fault. Averaged 28, 8, and 8 around those numbers in the finals against the Spurs, but still lost because Dwayne Wade was averaging 15 and Chris Bosh was averaging 14. And then in his 4th year, ended up losing to the Spurs because the Spurs were an incredibly talented team, and he was in his 4th year. The only loss that really is LeBron's fault is, as I said before, the Mavs. That's really the only finals loss where he has any sort of blame, because his performances are just too good to even blame him on any of these performances. But his fans, they still blame him because, of course, it's LeBron. You can watch the entirety of that segment. I explain it in complete detail. And I kind of want to continue. I will acknowledge your comment afterwards, but I do want to continue with this segment and cover some of the best defenders in this league. Now, the GMs were also asked a question on who the best interior defender was, and of course it's going to be Victor. I mean, I would be completely surprised if it was anyone else. It was a close battle, though, in the voting. He received 40% of the votes. Rudy Gobert ended up receiving 30% of the votes. Anthony Davis ended up receiving 10%. Bam Adebayo ended up receiving 7%. And other players that were also voted for were Giannis Antetokounmpo and Jaren Jackson Jr. for Memphis. And, I mean, Victor, I think it's clear-cut that Victor is the best rim protector. He is the tallest player on the court almost every single time. It makes absolutely no sense not putting him as one of the best rim protectors in the entire NBA. And the GMs were also asked who they feel is the most versatile defender, and it's not him, excuse me, wrong player. Here we go. Giannis Antetokounmpo, he is by far the most versatile defensive player in the entire NBA. He received 17% of the votes. I think he should have received a little bit more votes given how competent of a perimeter defender he is, as well as a rim protector. And that kind of, his wingspan and his length on the court also impacts a lot of players whenever he's guarding them. And I feel like he's becoming a little bit of an underrated defender as the years go on, but part of that is also due to the Victor Wembanyama hype, which is very real. He ended up being tied for second place with OG Anunoby for 13% of the votes as the most versatile defender. Bam Adebayo was 4th with 10%. Drew Holiday, Jonathan Isaac, Herb Jones, and Jaden Daniels were all tied at 5th for 7% of the votes. And really, I have no problem with those defensive ratings from the GMs. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of the GMs and their rankings. But back to what Manzano said in the chat, would you blame the Spurs' loss with Miami on LeBron, or is that the team around him? Yes, it's the team around him. Of course I'm going to blame that Miami loss on the team around him. Dwayne Wade averaged 15 points and 3 turnovers while averaging 2 assists. Chris Bosh only averaged 14 points, and the Spurs were shooting the lights out against that team. They were vastly outmatched, and LeBron was really the only solid player and the only player that elevated his game in the postseason. Meanwhile, Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh played horrendously. And he also continues, do you think that what hurts Bam. Oh, okay, so that's a completely different topic. So back on the defensive players, do you think that's what hurts Bam as a defender? A little defender that he can't be placed in one category. He's great at both perimeter and interior defending. It's really his height and the hype around Victor Wembanyama, because Victor Wembanyama can do exactly what Bam Adebayo can do, but he's 7'4" and can do it a lot better and is only expected to be better. Not to mention the presence of Rudy Gobert being a rim protector as well, and people sort of overrating him for how good the team plays defense. And I will say that, the reason why his team is ranked very high in the defensive category is because of him. I'm not saying that he doesn't have any value in that, but it's like putting Bam Adebayo in a solid defender when there's already defenders that are taller than him doing what he does, but a lot better and a lot more consistently. I don't think you can really consider Bam in that kind of conversation. Again, Victor can do essentially exactly what Bam can do, but a lot better. And what also hurts Giannis is injuries. I mean, I don't really know about that. He can't stay healthy in last few seasons. A lot of people, you see, when players get injured, it really depends on who gets injured. Because when Joel Embiid gets injured, a lot of people actually would flock to him and they would say oh, this is he got injured, it's not really his fault. But when Giannis gets injured, oh, he gets injured, it's his fault. And it's you see the double standard there? It's a little bit unfair. And yes, Giannis has gotten injured recently in his career at moments where he shouldn't be getting injured and at moments that are detrimental to his team, but that should not affect the fact that he is still a fantastic defender and a very solid overall defender for his team. So I don't really think it should. It might, but I don't think it should. And that's all that I really have to say, unless you have anything more to say in the comments. But that's all that I have. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the next segment, the fourth segment, which is going to be about Danny Green's retirement. Before I do that, Manzano does have something else to say in the chat. And he says, I see the same thing with Joel. I'm consistent with my criticism. Joel's issues is his injuries, and he disappears in the playoffs. Yes. But Giannis doesn't disappear in the playoffs. If he disappears, it's because of injury, but he doesn't disappear in the playoffs. He has proven that he can be a fantastic playoff performer and lead his team to the promised land. So he's already accomplished that. Now, can he do it again? That's a different question. That's also going to be down to how well the team plays around Giannis and how well Damian Lillard can play in the postseason. Because Damian Lillard, while his reputation as a clutch playoff performer is relevant, that's not necessarily true. His only good playoff series was that playoff series against OKC when he made that half-court dagger in Paul George's face. Aside from that, he has underperformed in almost every single postseason that he's played in, and that gets shoved under the rug because of that incredible half-court shot that he made to close out a first-round series. So, also the first-round series against Houston when he hit that other clutch three-pointer. Again, those two clutch three-pointers are essentially what carry his reputation in the postseason, and we'll have to see if he can sort of amend that with the Bucks this season. I don't think that's happening because Doc Rivers is their coach, but that's besides the point. Now we're going to go ahead and go into Danny Green's retirement right after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.